Hey everyone, welcome to the Call to Create podcast. I'm your host, Scott Branley, and I'm here with my wife and co host, Darla Branley, and our special guest, Jason Jones. Welcome, Jason.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So, Jason is one of the Praiseworthy Award winners for LDSPMA, and we wanted to invite him to the show to talk a little bit about his book and the story behind the book, and maybe have him give us some pointers on how to create. So, why don't we jump right in, Jason? And we kind of have a fun little story that is unique. So, why don't you tell us what you told me when we got on?
Yeah. So Scott and I actually met at the LDSPMA conference back in 2022, I believe.
Yep.
We sat next to each other at one of the classes, and as we were chatting, he mentioned he was writing a book, and I was writing a book, and we seemed to be at a similar stage in the writing. And he also mentioned he was doing podcasting. So yeah, it's good to see you again, and I'm glad we got this
Yeah,
podcast up and running. That's
I know,
wonderful.
crazy. So the crazy thing about that is I started this podcast after we met, right after we met, and now it's going on to its fourth year, which
4 years.
is mind blowing.
Your
So
consistency is very, very admirable. Yeah.
yeah, actually, maybe it's might be fifth year because we're hitting 200 episodes. So yeah, it's going on to its fifth year. Yeah, that's so crazy. Well, yeah, the full circle right there. But
The small world.
so yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jason?
Sure. So my name's Jason Jones, and I grew up in Orem, Utah. So I went to Windsor Elementary School, and then Orem High School, and then after high school, I went to UVCC, which was what UVU was back in the day. Then I went on a mission to South Korea, came back, and UVCC had changed to UVSC. And after one more year there, I transferred to BYU, and I graduated from BYU with a computer science degree. So I've been doing computer programming and software since then. Married, 3 kids, currently live in Lehigh. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. Well, so you kind of stuck close to home there. You're in
Yeah,
Lehigh.
But it's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
area.
We like Utah. We like Utah Valley. So
It's
Yeah,
all my
it's
awesome.
family
gorgeous.
is pretty much here still. So
Nice. Well, why don't we turn the time over to you and tell us where your story begins, my friend?
okay, yeah, that's a good question. When you start writing, it's always uh, it's always difficult to find the right place to begin your story. So um, I'll just jump in where we were just talking about my work. I worked up in Salt Lake. Our office was up there by the airport, and on Fridays for lunch to give us a little break, we'd go into downtown Salt Lake City for lunch, and after we eat, we'd like to walk around the town. And of course, there's Temple Square and different historical places you can visit. And as I just kind of got really interested in what I was seeing there, the different monuments and plaques, and I started reading up on the history. And then a few weeks later, as we were driving in, when you come off the freeway, you can kind of get a good view of Salt Lake City. And I just looked at that and I was like, that's nice. But what did the city look like back in, like the right after the pioneers arrived? What did it look like then? And I started thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a time travel story where we could have a character go back in time to this time period where the city was, just brand new and getting started. So that kind of kicked off my idea, and And then so where I'd worked, I'd previously done a couple of movies for the company. These were just like movies. They were kind of funny. We just had employees, be in the movies, and we kind of uh, just do some fun stuff to liven up our all employee meetings that we met together in. My favorite one was the first one we did called Bob's Cubicle. I thought that one was really good. But so I'd had some experience doing some of these lower, just fun movies. And when I had this idea for this time travel story, I thought, yeah, I need to make that movie is what I was thinking. And so um, that's where the idea started. And I thought, okay, I need to make a movie. How do I make a movie of this, of this caliber? And I thought, okay, I need to get a script prepared. And so I thought, okay, I don't know how to do that. I'm going to go find a way to write a screenplay. And so I got a book, I think it was called The Idiot's Guide to Screenplay Writing or something like that. But I went through that and I started writing the script. And when I was trying to flush out the story, you got to get a character and all these things, a good guy, a bad guy, the love interest, and all that stuff. And so I was working through all that. And then the thing that I was really having trouble with was how was I going to get him to time travel? Was kind of the big question that I was struggling with. It's like it'd be nice if I could have a DeLorean, with it goes back in the past and the tire tracks go, light up on fire. That was always pretty cool.
I'm getting deja vu here, Jason.
And so I was just thinking, how can we make this interesting? And so I finally figured out a way to get him back in time. And then the other twist is he can only go back in time one day a year, and he can only stay for one day at a time. So he's throughout the story he's growing up, and he's really only spending one day in the past each year. So that's kind of the premise for the story. Um, and then and he's going back in time to the 1850s. And so if you're going to Salt Lake City in the 1850s, you got to bump into Brigham Young, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he does, he does meet Brigham Young and some of the church leaders there at that time. So it's kind of fun. And so that's kind of where it started. I kind of jumped ahead to the completed thing, but so when I had the screenplay idea, I kept working on it, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the beginning, but I kept having this feeling that this was a good story, and that there'd be somebody that could benefit from me telling this story. But the screenplay didn't work out. I thought as soon as I had the screenplay done and I submitted it to some people in the business, I was sure that there was going to be, Hollywood producers knocking on my door with bags of cash in their hands, wanting to make this movie. That didn't happen. So I kept working on the screenplay because I just wanted to see this made into a movie, and this went on for like several years, where I thought I had it done, and then I sent it off to a contest and get some feedback on it, sent it off to somebody else to look at, and they'd give me some notes and things to work on, and it got to a point where I was just kind of after a couple of years, I was just kind of struggling with it, and I just kind of set it aside. Um, and I went to a meeting with a church meeting, and was talking to this lady, and I was telling her about my idea for this screenplay, and she said something to me that kind of stuck with me. She said, "Why don't you write a book?" And I looked at her and thought, well, I've just always kind of imagined and saw this story playing out as a movie, and I kind of told her that. And then I went home and started thinking about it and thinking about it. And I thought, yeah, why don't I write a book? So a few hours or a few years into the process there, I decided to change what I was doing, and I decided to write it as a novel. Naively, I thought, how it can't be that hard to write a
How
novel,
hard
right?
can it be?
How hard can it be? Um, and so I thought, well, I've got all the story all outlined and ready to go. So let's just. So actually, I was able to just kind of take what I had and put it into novel form in a couple months, which I was pretty proud of. But I knew what I'd done. The first draft, I knew it wasn't good. It needed a lot of work. And so I tried to reach out some people, some editors to help me get things going, improve it. And it went through several more drafts there. And one of the things that helped me out was when I went to LDSPMA, where I met you, Scott, and got some advice on the writing. And I was also able to, get into some in contact with some more people that would help me, improve the writing process and make things better. So that's kind of how it started. And this was, 2022 was a while ago. So my book came out in 2024. So it still took, several years to get it all done. But one of the things that really kept me, that was a roadblock for me, was just the imposter syndrome that you bump into every time you try and do something. There's that voice inside your head saying, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Who am
You can't
I?
do this. Yeah, who are you? You think you can write a book, and you're no expert on this stuff, and so that was always an issue. But one of the things that I did, as I was learning about the process, I read someplace that what you need to do is you need to create an ideal reader, kind of a fictitious ideal reader that you can write your book to and you can kind of speak to. And so I decided to do that. And since my book's kind of a young adult novel, and there's some romance in there, I thought, okay, that sounds like a novel that a young teenage girl would enjoy. So my ideal reader, I created as a 16-year old girl that lived in Payson, Utah. And I
Okay.
don't know why I chose Payson, Utah, but I just did. And so every time that I ran into these roadblocks, and I'd always just kind of remind myself, hey Jason, there's this 16-year-old girl down in Payson, and she's waiting on your book. So that kind of kept me going forward, even when I would hit the spots where I didn't really want to keep going. And so, yeah, I mean, at that point, in 2002, I hired an editor to help look at the story. She went through it, gave me some pointers, and then I sat on that for like 6 months. Finally, made some improvements to it, and this was at the end of 2023. I just said, okay, I just kept getting this feeling that you need to get it done, and there's somebody out there that could use this story and use the message that you're trying to tell. So the main theme of my book, there's a lot of history from our family, so there's some family history, but there's also an underlying theme of the temple marriage, and the Salt Lake Temple is one of the things that kind of comes up a lot in the story. So yeah, I just kept getting these feelings. So at the end of 2023, I just let's just get this done. And so I just said, let's just make sure it gets published. I'm going to hire everybody that I can to get all the stuff that I don't want to do done. So I hired somebody to
Yeah.
do, the cover and all the types and just all the stuff that I didn't really feel comfortable doing. And that was good. I actually worked with a company called Eschler Editing, and they were good to work with. And they helped me get everything ready to go. And so we were able to finally release the book in the summer of 2024. So about a year and a half ago. And so when you release a book, it's been a long, hard journey. So I wanted to have a party when we finally got the book finished. So we had a release party in June, and invited all my friends and family to the party. And we had it at my sister's. She has a book bindery in Provo, and so we all met together at her office there, and we had this party. And one of the people, we had a lot of friends, family, and my younger sister showed up with her husband, and she was excited to read the book too, and I was happy to share it with her, but I wasn't sure how she was going to receive the book. So this particular sister had been away from the church for over 20 years, and I wasn't sure how she was going to receive some of the messages that were in the book. Mm-hmm. And so but we had a great time at the launch party. And then a couple weeks later, I got we have a family group text. I'm sure those are pretty popular these days. And this younger sister, her name's Julie. She sent a text, and she said, "Hey, I'm like halfway through Jason's book, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying some of the characters. They remind me a lot of our family. So the book was written with a lot of based on a lot of my family. So the main character is kind of based on my son. His name's Benny." And the grandfather, so Benny's grandfather is kind of based on my dad, which was obviously my sister's dad also, and my mother's. Got a picture in the book. Actually, let me find that real quick. So, hey, I turned right to it. That's my mother. When she was young, we kind of dressed her up to be in like 1950s outfit, but and I don't know if you noticed, but she's standing by the tabernacle there on Temple Square. And so, anyways, my sisters started reading this book, and I was very happy about that. And then a couple weeks later, she said, "Hey, I finished the book, and I really enjoyed the story about some of our ancestors and some of the church leaders, and mom and dad." And she said, "I'm starting to have some feelings that I might want to make some changes to my life and come back to church." And that was it had been 20 plus years, and so we were all kind of surprised, but very happy and willing to help her out wherever we could. So so after that, like a couple a week or two later, she reached out and said, "Hey, I really need some help." She was going through some difficulties with cleaning up some of the word of wisdom issues that she was having, and she needed some help. And so she reached out and she said, "Can you come give me a priesthood blessing?" And of course, we were very helpful, very grateful for that opportunity. So we went over, to her home. We're able to administer to her and support her in any way that we could. And I'm very proud of my sister. She can be very determined when she sets her mind something to, and she basically just stopped right one day, and she would just worked her way through all of these issues, and that was just a special experience. And then it didn't stop there. A couple weeks later, we got the message that, hey, I made it to church with my husband, and then a couple weeks later, hey, I sang in the choir today.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was over many months, and then we got the message that, hey, my husband's taking the discussions,
So he wasn't a member?
and he wasn't a member, no.
Wow.
And yeah, so all of this kind of came about, and then so it was last year in March. Actually, it was March 1st. It was the anniversary of my mom passing 4 years ago. That Charlie, my sister's husband, he was able to be baptized, and so we all enjoyed a nice evening there, or a nice day there, and enjoyed his baptism. And it's a beautiful story. Um, I just talked to my sister today. Called her, and she didn't pick up, and she called back, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, we were in our temple preparation class. This is the last one."
Wow.
And so her and her husband are getting ready to go to the temple here coming up in March, which is just a beautiful thing to see. And I don't think that was. I mean, sure, my book might have had a spark that kind of got this. Sometimes we call it the spirit of Elijah, but the spirit of our ancestors and our relatives helping us from beyond the veil. I believe that's what kind of helped my sister in this case. Is, like I said, the book was based on our family, and if you know what you're looking for, you can see my dad in the story, and
Mhm.
there's also one of the years that Benny goes back in time. He bumps into his great 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 grandfather back in Salt Lake City at that time. So there's some fun things that happen for that. But yeah, I mean, it was really just an opportunity to allow the spirit to come into her life, I believe. So I guess the kind of the funny thing was I was writing this book in my mind. I was writing this book for a 16-year-old girl in Payson, but it ended up being my sister. Sorry, which was better than anything I could have asked for, right?
Wow.
I love that. I have family who they came back after 30 years, and I love them to pieces. And when I could stand in the temple with them,
Yeah,
that was like the most touching experience, to know how much they struggled and how hard it was for them, and to be there and be so happy, you know.
thank you. I
When you
appreciate
get
that.
to stand with your sister in the temple, it'll be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was talking to her today, she said, "Yeah." She said, "I was away from the church for 25 years, but I still remember all the primary songs."
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? That
It
is so
is, yeah.
true.
Those
They stick with
primary
you.
those primary song leaders are doing good work. Yeah,
Yes. And if you think of the lyrics, they are very, very precise doctrine in there. That's
Yeah. I mean, one of the first songs we ever learned is "I'm a Child of God," but the lessons in that song are profound. And
that's
I'm
right.
sure that was in her mind even all these 25 years, right?
yeah,
And it's the thing I love about your story is, your book was one of the, because we always talk about, oh, I think I planted a seed, right? You hear that when you're a missionary or, like throughout your life, you're like, you do something good, you're like, well, I think I planted a seed. You never know when those seeds are going to actually sprout and do some good. But in your case, that one little seed was a part of that catalyst that helped to make something sprout and grow, which is that's amazing. And the fact that it was your sister makes it even more special, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the book hasn't been real successful as far as selling millions of copies or anything, but it's definitely been fulfilling in just what it's been able to do. And I just wanted to mention, we talked about LDSPMA a little bit, but if there's if you have an inspiration or a feeling to go out and write a book, produce some creativity works, artwork or whatever. You never know how the Lord can use what you're producing to benefit His purposes. So
That
I
is
think
true.
kind of the main takeaway for me is if you're feeling prompted or have a feeling that you should be doing something, yeah, please follow those promptings and let the Lord kind of take care of things.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think anybody in the LDS market is very few are going to make enough money to actually, like support their family or whatever, right? The
Yeah,
market's
that's
just
I hope.
not big enough, right? But
Yeah.
but there are some that do. Odds are you're probably not going to make it to that level, but like it took you 8 years to write, from the
Took me.
beginning to the end, right? It
Yeah.
took me 9. Um, and if in your case,
Oh, there it is.
what?
You got your book right there, hun.
Oh, awesome, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, let's talk about your book. It's
What
kind of
did you
fun that
think
we were
about
sitting
it?
there. It's kind of fun that we were at that conference, and I was like 3 or 4 years away from publishing my book, and
Yeah,
it's cool to see that you got yours out there too. That's
dude,
awesome.
that's so cool. You bought my book.
Yeah, about your
Wow.
book. So I actually, um, I went to your webpage where you can get the audio, and I started listening
Hmm.
to the audio. And you did the audio, right? You read
Yeah.
the audiobook,
Yep.
and it was great. I don't know how I could ever do an audiobook, but you did a great job.
He's done a few because he's written several business books as well, and he reads them too.
Okay,
Oh.
yeah. And so I was listening to the audiobook, and about halfway through, you started talking about maps and stuff, and I was like, I need to get the pictures, right? I need to see what
Yeah.
these maps really are. I enjoy maps, so I noticed there was a way to get the ebook on your website too. So I was able to get that and look at the pictures of the maps and the different pictures and follow along with that as I finished up the book, which was good. And then after I finished it, I enjoyed it so much I thought I need to get a copy of that so I can reference it and flip through the pages and see some of the revisit some of those things that you said because I really enjoyed it. It was very well done.
Wow. You just totally made my day. I, I I had no idea that you did that. That's like, wow, that's like the coolest compliment. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's very well done.
Thank you.
Well, I definitely
High
want to read
five.
your book. So,
High five.
High five. Yeah, thanks. But yeah, your book sounds amazing too.
yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, did we mention the book of the name? It's called One Day a Year.
One
One
day,
day. Okay.
And I did
that's
write it under J. Lamont Jones, just because there's a lot of Jason Joneses out there online, and thought it might be easier to find you if I use my middle name, which is
Yeah.
Lamont.
Well,
So
we'll definitely put that in the show notes so that anyone
sure.
that wants it can easily
oh yeah.
click on it and go get it. So, is it available on Amazon or
It's on
where?
Amazon, yeah.
Okay.
Amazon, and the audiobook's also available wherever you can get your audiobooks. So,
Awesome.
Awesome.
It's funny. I have two things I want to say, but the a lot of people think the audiobooks are hard. Going back to your audiobook comment, but it's actually pretty easy to do. Um, you just get a mic and you just start reading your script. And with Audacity, it's a free program. You just record on a decent mic. I think my mic was like $50, but you just record it chapter by chapter, and then it's got a filter inside Audacity that checks to make sure that it's the right quality for Amazon. And then once you pass that filter, you just save it and upload it, and you're done.
Really?
So yeah, it's actually pretty easy to do. But my second thought was that, and I'm going to go back a little bit to what we were talking about, but as writers or creators, a lot of times, like I said, we probably aren't going to get rich doing it, but
That's not why
but the
you do
cool
it.
part is that's not necessarily the motivation that we do
Yeah.
it, right? There's an idea, there's just a drive to get that idea or that spark of light out there. And our hope is that we touch one person, and make a difference. And in your case, you did that, and you know exactly who that is. And that's incredibly fulfilling. But I think it also is the person themselves, right? If our book doesn't, or our creation doesn't touch anyone else's lives that we know of directly, I'm sure it will, right? But even if it doesn't, it impacts our life. Like, I look back on the time that I spent on writing my book, 9 years, and it was off and on, right? But I look back and I think of all the hours and thought and like the walks I went on
Research.
trying to put the ideas together, and talking with my family and friends, and getting feedback and all of that stuff. I grew more
Mm.
than I could have ever imagined as a person. And I'm sure you can relate to that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Just even maybe researching your family stories to put into the book can build that bond with that
Yeah.
with your ancestors.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what was your experience with that on the personal growth side?
So, yeah, I mean, it really was just, getting confirmation that, yeah, I can do this. Each step of the way was I was going into, what for me, uncharted territory. And I was just like, can I really do this? Can I, am I the person that's supposed to be able to, tackle the next step? If it was, writing the book, or all the other steps that came on there. And of course, there's always the thing that after you get the book out there, it's like, oh, now I have to go and tell everybody about it. And that's not really my I'm not really that person to go out and shout about it. But I've tried to, increase my social media presence a little bit and give some updates there, here and there. So one fun thing that I did last summer. So the book has kind of a pioneer day theme to it. So last year, I decided to deliver some of the books to you've probably seen those little libraries that people have in front of their homes.
Yeah.
You can hold 20 books or so. But I decided I'm going to buy a bunch of my books, and then I'm going to deliver them to every county in Utah was my goal. So
Awesome.
I drove around Utah for a couple weeks. It was a countdown to July 24th, to Pioneer Day. And so I did that. That was kind of fun. It was probably more fun for me than anybody else, but kind of had some fun doing that. So,
But I love that
yeah.
idea. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and as a creator, sometimes you have to get creative. That's, right? That's a really good idea.
Yeah, and it was kind of, so I was kind of filming myself putting these books in the little libraries, and I was like, it was like a 50-day countdown. And at about book 40, I realized, hey, I got to switch this up a little bit. Can't be the same thing every time. So I tried to, do different things. Sometimes I'd like throw the books in. Sometimes I'd try and do some tricks with the camera to make it more interesting. It's
Yeah,
just tried to keep it interesting that way. So
well, that's super
So
fun.
fun.
So, do you have any plans to write any other books? Does this spark the creative juices inside of you to do more, or what's your plan?
yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely done that. I've a lot of people have asked about a sequel, which I actually tried to write the sequel, and I couldn't get very far on the book. Um, so I kind of pivoted and did a couple other things. But one of the things that maybe I'll talk about, this is where I bring in the props. So
Okay.
you ready? This
Yeah.
is this is this is on the next book. So when I was a boy, can you see this? This is a dinosaur book.
Dinosaur? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I really liked dinosaurs. And so I thought, if I wanted to write a kid's book about the Salt Lake Temple and the construction of the Salt Lake Temple. So I thought, if we could just get the dinosaurs to come in and tell the story,
That would be so
I,
cute.
I,
I
fi-
love
I, fi-
that.
I figured I'd have a winner if I could do that, if I could somehow integrate dinosaurs and the building of the Salt Lake Temple together. It was
Yeah.
a good idea,
That's
but I
fun.
couldn't figure it out. So,
Oh.
so what I did instead is I noticed there was a lot of more props. I noticed there was all this construction equipment, doing work on the
Yeah.
temple site. And I thought, hey, well, kids don't just like dinosaurs. Some of them like, big trucks and
Hmm.
excavators and stuff. And so I thought,
Yeah.
okay, let's write a story about that. And so that's where the idea for my picture book that's coming out in this summer. It's called Daniel in the House of the Lord, and it's about a screwdriver.
Okay.
So the main character is a screwdriver that's very excited to help with the renovation of the temple, and so he's going around to all these the equipment. So he goes to the dump truck and says, "Hey, do you have a job for me? I really want to help." And the dump truck says, "Hey, you're a little too small to help. Maybe you can find something else." And so he goes to like the excavator and these different big, huge construction equipment, and they turn him down. And but at the very end of the movie, he does find a way that he can help, and there's a job for him to do at the temple. So that's kind of how that's how the story ends. So I'm looking forward to that one. That one's should be available this summer in July. So that one's going to
That
be
sounds
published
so
with
fun.
yeah, that one will be published with Cedar Fort. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Very
I have
cool.
any more props? I think that's it. I got the books, right? We got the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, we got the books. Yeah, both of
If I
them.
Love
leave,
it.
Awesome.
if I
That's
leave.
so cool that we sat by each other and then we both have books. So
Yeah,
we
very
actually did
cool.
it, man. We actually did the thing.
Yeah, look at these
Yeah.
maps.
Yep.
Yeah. That is so cool. That it really like makes me
That's
so
fun.
happy. So
Hopefully, we
Someone
keep
read it.
things
That's
interesting.
awesome.
yeah, now maybe if you maybe my wife will read my book. Now that she heard how good it is.
I've read parts of it, but I hear all about it, and I know everything that he has in there. It's just because I hear about it. I just haven't
Yeah,
gone.
yeah. I think my wife was kind of the same way. She'd heard enough about it. That's like I know what's happening. You've run everything by me, and you've kind of told me all
Yeah.
about it. So yeah.
Yeah, for 9 years. I guess I'll give her that. But I still like to give her a hard time.
Nice.
Well, awesome. Jason, this has been a treat. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your story with us. And we usually like to end things with any final thoughts that you might have that you'd like to share.
Sure, I can give a few thoughts. I don't know if they'll be good thoughts, but I think for me, just the big the takeaway that I've learned is if you're prompted or have a feeling that there's something out there that the Lord wants you to do, go ahead and take Him up on that, and He'll help you through the process, and then also He'll be able to use what you've produced in a way that He needs to. So that's kind of my last thoughts on that. But it's been really fun to be here with you guys. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
I'm excited to read both of your books. So
Nice.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Well, thanks for coming on, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Remember, go and hit that share button. Do your 5-second missionary work. Let's help Jason get his story out there so that he can help other people and share the light, and hopefully, um, inspire and enlighten others. And once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time with another episode. Till then, take care. Bye bye.